Welcome to the Base Path Podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. I'm your host, Dan Guttenplan. Today, we have one of the coaches of one of the top programs in New England, one of the top prep programs in New England, Pat Moriarty from Deerfield. Pat, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been. I'm surprised that I haven't had you because you've had such a competitive program in New England for the last couple of years. You won the Central New England Prep League, I think in 2024, right? Or 2024. And then you were right back in there competing for a championship again last year. How's everything going for you this fall?
Everything's great. It's been a great fall term, just wrapping it up this past Friday. Students are on break now, so getting a little bit of rest here. But again, excited to join your show, and I really appreciate all that you do for prep baseball and for the student athletes in this area.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you saying that. So let's start off by going back to because you had a very successful coaching career at Springfield Cathedral. You guys actually made the Super 8 of the MIA tournament. That was back, I think you've been at Deerfield now, 8 or 9 years?
This is 9 years at Deerfield, yeah.
9 years, wow. So let's go back to your decision to kind of go from an MIA school to a prep school, and what inspired you to kind of take on that challenge? Because it is a lot different when it comes down to recruiting. And like we had just talked off air, and you said you're living in a 10th grade dorm. Like, it's a completely different experience. What inspired you to kind of go that route?
Yeah, I think you're right on, Dan. I think it was a new challenge. Things were great at Springfield Cathedral. I appreciate all my time there. I actually graduated from Cathedral, met my wife there, played hockey and baseball there as a high schooler, and I'm in the Hall of Fame there as well. And when the opportunity presented itself at Deerfield, I felt like it was a new challenge. I was in my early 40s. Deerfield baseball was struggling a bit. I think averaging 2 or 3 wins a year, and then I thought, coming off a Super 8 appearance, that this was a new challenge and a new step and a fresh beginning. And while I love my time at Cathedral, I was really intrigued with the offer here at Deerfield, and I have no regrets. I've loved every minute of it here.
Yeah, we see the field house in the background, and obviously, prep facilities all across New England are pretty amazing. What was it about Deerfield? Was it like the geographic location, or what was it that really separated itself among, all the prep schools that we have in New England?
Well, it was a place that I almost attended in 1989. I would have been a classified 10th grader. And I just think the overall traditions, the values, the philosophies of the school, they do things so well here across the board, not just athletically, but academically and socially. And there are wonderfully talented students from all over the world here. And I was excited to make this be my next chapter here.
So then you come in and, the program building piece, like you said, it was it was a program that had struggled and was winning 2 or 3 games a year. And I even went back, I was reading some of those first articles after you got hired. And the goal at that point was kind of to just make this Central New England tournament at the end of the year. And that's a 6-team tournament. And now, it seems like you guys are the 1 or 2 seed every year. But what were some of the first steps that you had to take as a new prep school coach that maybe you didn't anticipate, or maybe that you did have the plan to implement as soon as you got there?
Yeah, I think it was, first off, like, believing in ourselves. It was having a vision, believing in ourselves, expecting to compete. I think early on, I think my first year here, I didn't recruit anybody the summer that I was hired. So I was taking the existing program on when I started. I think we had 1 college baseball player in that senior class. And it was just having those students believe that they could compete and that they could play with some of the more talented programs at the time.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you look at that league, I think it's as competitive as just about any league in New England, just because you do have the postgraduate players, you have the option to reclassify. It's, and then Dexter obviously has been especially strong since Dan Donato kind of took over there. Kevin Graber's back at Phillips Andover now. That makes them, obviously very strong. Exeter Cushing has been kind of a program on the rise in the last few years. Um, I would imagine, the recruiting piece was probably something right away. You said, hey, we've got to get in some, maybe like you said, you had one college player. So there's a different caliber of players that I think you would need to recruit to really compete in that league. Did you find that to be the case, 8 or 9 years ago?
I totally did, and I don't think you could have put it better. I think our league is the best in New England. I think Coach Donato does a fantastic job at Dexter. Love competing and coaching against him. He and I are actually very good friends. It's great to have Kevin Graber back. I think he will have Andover back on top soon. Again, like you said, Coach Suchanek at Cushing's done a really nice job. Coach Abraham at Worcester and Coach Metropolis up at Exeter. I think they've done a fantastic job. But yeah, I think what intrigued me most was being able to recruit nationwide, and to get players not just from Massachusetts but New England. Our roster now has players from Texas, from California, from Florida, from Maryland. So just being able to spread my wings and get some different type players in here, and to really look for not only the best players but the best people, and the high academic kids with high character, that want to be coached and want to get better. That was what really intrigued me.
And how is that done? Like, how do you recruit on a national stage? Obviously there are a lot of kids now with the way that the college, the transfer portal and everything like that are looking for like an extra year, a PG year, just to buy a little bit more time to try to extend their careers. But how do you get Deerfield out there as the option that would be appealing to kids from Texas or California?
Yeah, I think it's winning, right? I really do. I think it's competing and winning. And, I think the simple fact, and it's something that I don't do and I refuse to do, is I don't over recruit the program. I feel like our roster size is usually anywhere from 17 to 20. The players that come here, I'm pretty transparent with prior to them getting here in terms of building relationship. I think recruiting is about building relationships. And I think that students that come here have such a good experience that they go back to their neighborhoods, their cities, their towns, their states, their locations in the United States, and say like, hey, I had a really good experience, not just with baseball at Deerfield, but across the board, socially and academically. And I think it starts to kind of sell itself. Although, I am out in the summer recruiting, hustling, meeting people, talking to people. I think travel ball coordinators and directors have been outstanding bits of support for us as well. So all those factors, I think, have helped us get to the next level.
And when you say you're out recruiting in the summer, does that take place at like showcase events and tournaments, clinics, camps, or are you affiliated with the travel ball program?
I actually am. I coach with the Expos
Oh yeah,
out of Lynn, Massachusetts. Coach Gilbride.
yeah.
But yeah, and I think I have two Expo players on my roster right now. So while I love the Expos, and that's allowed me to continue to coach in the summer, that I have good relationships with the Roughnecks, NEB, Nakona, all those different US9 prospects, all those different programs have been really, really friendly with me. But I think it's attending showcases. I evaluate at several different college showcases. I'm at most of the post perfect game events and PBR events. So I think it's just being out and about and just, watching talent, evaluating talent, meeting people, have all led to this success here.
Yeah, we were just talking. So your son now is at Bowdoin, and he had a great playing career at Deerfield. I remember that. Did you find that helped in terms of like, you're following his career, you're seeing the kids that are playing at his age level or maybe a little bit above or below? Did you find that gave you an opportunity to give kids more looks and, do some recruiting while you were out watching your son?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And until he went into the Expos program, probably I think 10th grade summer, he played in the Expos program and didn't play for me for the first time because he had me basically all the way up until then. Yeah, I think it really did, especially from a young age. We had like an under 10 or an under 12 program, both in Springfield, where across the board, we had, I think I carried 11 players on that team. I think 6 are playing college baseball. I think of Columbia, Bowdoin, St. Anselm's. There are a bunch of different kids on that team. We have a player on that team that is now golfing at Vanderbilt. We have a player on that team that is now playing football at Boston College. We had some tremendous athletes and some great memories with those groups. But yeah, certainly getting out early and often, even under 10, under 12, under 14, gave me a great sense and sort of barometer of the talent level. On that championship team in 2024, I actually had 3 players, including my son, from those younger teams that I coached, U8, U10, U12. So it was kind of a nice ending for that group for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the championship season, right? 2024.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Now with the recruiting piece, I had mentioned earlier, it's gotten a little difficult. I mean, I don't know if it's more difficult or it's just, it drags out over a longer period of time, more kids taking PG years, things like that. Um, when you are in contact with somebody taking a PG year, is it usually somebody who's saying, I have interest from this school, but they do want me to spend another year before I come. They don't have a spot for me this year. Or is it somebody that's like, hey, I don't have a lot of interest right now. I need to come to Deerfield and drum up interest, because that wouldn't even be, they're not playing a whole lot at Deerfield until the spring. How does that recruitment work?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, we recruit, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Um,
Okay.
but, so we'll reclassify or take someone in. Most of our students reclassify. Most of our families are looking for an extra year of high school. So it's very common. I bet 98% of our players have reclassified. Not a requirement for me, but I think it's just people getting ahead of the recruiting landscape and wanting that extra year for physicality, for maturity, for maybe it's an extra year of math or standardized testing, whatever. So, but with the postgraduate piece, it is difficult, and there's no, as set blueprint to recruiting. I think, for postgraduate baseball players, the summer before is really important, but even the fall when they get to campus, we've had several postgraduates come to campus and be uncommitted still. And just kind of working with those guys one-on-one, making sure that they're getting the good video, getting the good reps so that they stay fresh for showcases in the fall. Because, in my opinion, I feel like the whole recruiting timeline and process has pushed back. I feel like a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, July 1st was a big date, August 1st was a big date, and then it was kind of almost done by mid-August. Now I feel like it's more and more coaches are leaving some of those recruited slots open later in the fall, even into, possibly regular decision and or ED2, come January 1.
Yeah, I feel like and you obviously have background in hockey as well. I feel like it's starting to trend more like hockey. I used to cover hockey, 10 years ago, and I would find that coaches, college coaches, especially at the D1 level, they wanted, 20, 21-year-old freshmen. And I find that now with baseball, it's kind of trending in that way. I remember seeing Henry Dorman as one of your guys that you have this year as a postgraduate. And I saw he just made a commitment, I want to say in October, to Fairfield, or even maybe early November. But that just seems so late for a D1 commitment. But, was that something that kind of you helped him with along the way in the fall, or how did that come together for him?
Yeah, Henry's been fantastic. Henry's actually a reclassed 11th grader, so he's a 27.
Oh, he is. Okay.
So it was actually an early. Yeah, Fairfield was on his radar. He and I were talking through the recruiting process. He wanted to reclass here, and he just loved everything that Fairfield did. He loved the relationships he built there, and he stayed uncommitted until this fall. And then he and I sat down and talked, and he said, Coach, I'm having trouble finding a program that I like more than the coaches and the players at Fairfield. So I'm committing, and my philosophy, at Deerfield is, for all of our players here, is not just for 4 years of baseball, is for 40 years of life. And we have players at Williams and Amherst and Bowdoin, obviously a couple, Bates, Harvard, BC, couple at Cornell, Skidmore. We believe in the 40-year plan of life rather than the 4-year baseball plan, and he fit that mode.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's a way to do it because a lot of times now, not a lot of times, I should say, like we'll see examples over the last couple of years of guys who, maybe they need Tommy John surgery or maybe they suffer some type of injury, and that commitment, only to find out it's not as binding as they might have thought, and they end up uncommitted, pretty late in the game. So I think that is a good strategy to prepare them for 40 years, and then that way, when they encounter adversity or situations like that, they're prepared to kind of handle it in their own unique way that they've kind of grown at Deerfield.
I agree. I've coached major leaguers and I've coached a lot of power four guys and Division 2 guys and Division 3 guys. And sooner or later, like you just said, like the game comes to an end, and how prepared are they for life after baseball? And I think that's important. So much so that we just recently hired a former player of mine here, Tommy Limecooler. He was a 3-year kid for us. He reclassed as a 10th grader and attended Deerfield 10, 11, 12, and then committed to Holy Cross where he pitched for 4 years. And now he's back here helping me as my assistant on my staff and coaching math here. So nothing makes me prouder than when our players come back to visit, to check in, and especially to work and help me with baseball.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about the kind of the fascination or the increased focus on velocity, or even, you see it at the major league level now. Guys are coming out of the bullpen. Everybody throws 100. If you're watching the World Series, everybody's in triple digits. And then even at the high school level, we've done a little bit of research, I guess, at the Perfect Game WWBA event. It used to be like a handful of kids every year would throw 95 miles an hour. And now I think there's almost 40 kids this year that threw 95 at the event in Jupiter. And it seems like with that, there are more injuries as well because guys are trying to max out on every pitch or really hit that high velocity mark. Do you have a structure in place to kind of, you can't prevent that stuff, obviously TJ injuries happen and, it's a pretty violent throwing motion in baseball. So injuries are going to happen, but do you have a plan in place? And it probably would be starting, about now in the off season where you kind of have a throwing program and ramp people up slowly. And then also the work that you do in the strength and conditioning, in the weight room is also kind of blended with that, or how are you doing that at Deerfield?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big velo guy, but here I am with, I think 3 of our starters this year will hit 90. Uh, so we really talk to our pitchers and train our pitchers to pitch and to execute pitches. And, I think of, two of our pitchers that just graduated last year that were each here for 3 years, Connor Nemec and Trip Wadowitz, Trips at Richmond and Connor Nemec's up at Cornell. At times they could just about get to 90 or hit 90, maybe a little bit more, but they were consistent 88 guys with really good, in Tripp's case, a changeup and a curveball and a slider that any pitch, any count, any time. And Nemec with sort of that fastball, the 2-seamer, and then the splitter, which I thought was really effective. So we talked to our guys more about executing pitches and being able to throw anything. I call all our pitches for our pitchers and being able to execute a pitch at any time in the count. I know what frustrates our lineup most from a pitcher is someone that we can't just sit dead red against and gear up on the fastball, because if we're sitting fastball, we'll hit the 92, 93, 94, whatever. If we have to think of whether or not he can throw a changeup or a slider on those counts, it gets frustrating and a little difficult. And to answer your question about training here, so we have 2 full-time strength and conditioning coaches here. We have a baseball-specific lifting program that is specific to positions, catcher, pitcher. Obviously, our outfielders, we want to be more explosive and quick twitch. And so, yeah, we're doing a lot of core stuff. We do a lot of things, a lot of workouts, a lot of stretching in season even. We call it body and arm care. And yeah, our pitchers also and our players have a program that they'll start in this field house right after January 1st. Basically a weekly program here where they'll work on stretching out and strengthening their arms and not going too quickly. So with the hope of their first start for our starting pitchers being 45 to 50 pitches at our spring training trip to IMG.
Nice. And what about the mental side of baseball? I've heard more and more programs, prep programs, invest resources into because it is, such a game of failure, and you have to make sure guys are staying positive and not having mental deficiencies, I guess, when they're out there on the field. Is there any attention paid to that in Deerfield's program?
We do. The school has sort of a mental health coach or an athletic coach, but I think players gravitate to Deerfield and to me and my coaching staff, which has been the same coaching staff now for 9 years, because we're not yellers. We're not going to get on guys. We talk about we're going to make some mistakes. We want our mistakes to be aggressive mistakes. We want to be mentally sharp, but we want to make sure that if we're making mistakes, it's because we've got our foot on the gas pedal and we're going full speed. And our guys know that I'm not going to get on them. We're going to talk about different things when the time is right. And then I'm going to manage them. And that, I think after even, every year since I've been here, as I mentioned, I call all the pitches here. But it's always a conversation after every inning is pulling our catcher and pitcher aside, saying, "Hey, what do you like? What did you not like? How you feeling here?" So it's we're working together, I think, and I think our players realize that and appreciate that, and the open dialogue and communication has really helped us be successful in terms of letting me know what my players want from me and vice versa.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about we had a story last week. I guess the Lowell Spinners are coming to Lowell as a Futures League team, and Kevin Graber, who we talked about earlier, the Andover coach, is going to be the head coach there. And then I was thinking, like, that's not really going to be a recruiting opportunity for him, because you can take incoming freshmen, but like they would already be done with a high school or prep program. Do you see that as an opportunity, an added opportunity that they've added a franchise for Deerfield athletes, or is it pretty regional where your guys might play for another team, out in a little bit more Western Mass?
Yeah. Well, we've got players all throughout Futures. My son played NECBL last year. So there's some good connections there. I'm glad that Kevin's doing that. I think the Spinners are going to steal some bases this summer, probably.
Yeah.
But no, that's great for him. In terms of my time in the summer, and this is just my opinion, I would rather coach U15 or U16. I think that's much more conducive to what I'm doing here and everything else. But I know that Kevin will do an outstanding job with Lowell, and I'm glad to hear that the Futures League is expanding again, because I think they only had 6 teams last year, maybe 7 teams, and hope to get back up to 12 to 15 to give, especially our prep players, but even the college players, an opportunity to play a high level of baseball in the summer.
Mm-hmm. And now, taking a look at your program, you had mentioned a couple of really successful arms. Connor and Tripp obviously had long, very successful careers with you. Will this be a transition year? Or are you looking? I mean, I was looking at the list of transfers that you guys have coming in this year. It looks like you kind of should be very strong again. What's your kind of outlook as you look to the 2026 season?
Yeah, well, I think Dan Donato's got an exceptional group over at Dexter. I think they maybe are the favorites, but we split with them last year regular season and just got off to a poor start in the championship game against them. But I got a lot of respect for his program, so I feel like they're the favorites. But I like our group a lot. This is not a rebuild here at all. This is a reload. I feel like the admissions office here, they do a wonderful job. They accepted some players that can step right in. Again, I think of those top 3 pitchers we have of Henry Dorman, who's a 27, in no particular order either. Jack Walcox from Jupiter, Florida. Tyler Easterbrook, who's committed to Tufts, Jack Walcox is committed to Marist, and then Dorman committed to Fairfield, along with, some rising juniors, and Avery Powers, who was here last year. We got a good young player, Nick DeSano, a freshman arm. We've got Tim Herrick from California, who's a sophomore now. So we've got some real depth up and down the lineup and throughout the program. And I'm really excited about this group for sure. And I hope that we're, right back in that final game again. That's our goal.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys have been going there the last few years. You played Worcester there in 2023, then you won in 2024 and then played Dexter, or you played Andover as well in 2022. I remember going to that game and talking to you afterwards.
We did. Yeah. That was a great game. We were probably 2 outs away there. That's when a lot of that crew, including my son and Gavin Rigney, who I mentioned a bunch, those guys were all 10th graders. We started a 10th grade infield in that game. And I thought they were fantastic. Ryan McHugh, who's at Harvard now, was injured for that game, a little sore. I felt like if we had him, maybe things would have been a little different. But that was one heck of a game. Yeah, 2023, we got beat in the semis at Worcester in a really competitive game. I think it was a 4-3 game. Won it in 2024, 2 walk-offs, extra innings in both, against a good Andover team, and then the final against Worcester. And then, this year this past year we beat Worcester again in the semi, and just kind of ran into a buzz on Dexter. I thought Dexter was outstanding, especially early in that championship game last year. So, yeah.
I remember that last one, the 2022 year, when you lost to Andover. You were kind of saying, what we want is what Andover has kind of established here over the last 5 or 6 years, and you guys have definitely had success in establishing that. You guys are deep in the tournament every year and kind of a perennial favorite. So congratulations on that. But Pat, do you have a few minutes to hang in there for our 3 up, 3 down segment?
Absolutely.
All right, nice. Let me introduce you to our producer, David Yaz.
3 up, 3 down.
This is a segment where I lob 3 questions the way of both our panelists here, both our guest, Pat, and Dan. But Pat, you're the guest, so you get to go first. First question, give me an example of a personal relationship in your life, whether it be a friendship or family or significant other, that has been shaped by baseball in some fashion.
Yeah, great question. I think the relationship with my son, growing up and coaching him at a young age, but even going out, I remember when he was, 2, 3, 4 years old, of just going out in the yard and playing a game of catch. And that was a lot of times the way that he and I communicated, whether I was throwing him BP or playing catch with him. And I just feel like we really, really got to know each other well through, batting practice, or just being he and I one-on-one out in the fields playing catch, talking about things. I don't think, maybe to this day, he does recognize, the value of those conversations, but I know I certainly did, and got to know a lot more about him through baseball.
Excellent answer. I mean, you can't go wrong. Fathers and sons in baseball, and it's why they invented wiffle ball in the first place, because you can't throw a fastball with the real ball for a 4-year-old kid. I don't. But anyways, excellent answer, Pat. How about you, Dan?
I could easily do my dad, but I will do my uncle on this one. He is he was a huge Yankees fan in like the 1960s, and he is now very into collectibles. So he has like bats and Mickey Mantle autographed baseballs and all this stuff. And once he knew, this was my job, every time I see him, he's like, "Hey, did I tell you about the new ball I got, or the new bat?" And he just rented a house in Cooperstown, like at the beginning of the fall in September, and he invited me to come down for the weekends. And he had a bunch of other baseball fans in town. But yeah, that's kind of the at the forefront of our relationship at this point in our lives.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So you've been to his place in Cooperstown?
He rented it. It was like,
rented it. Okay.
Yeah. So all these, I think all these like little league teams and youth league teams end up having tournaments in Cooperstown. So he rented one of these houses that, like, if you're in Cooperstown playing a tournament there, it has like 8 bedrooms, and then he just invited a bunch of baseball enthusiasts. So I got the invite, so I went down there for it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
If you're not a sucker for that kind of nostalgia, then you're just not American.
That's right.
I mean, it reminds me of the Billy Crystal movie City Slickers, which there's a lot of baseball references in there, fathers and sons and such. And the Daniel Stern character says, it's pathetic that we remember all these stats and everything. But, when I was 17 years old and I just couldn't talk to my dad about anything, we could always talk about baseball. So we're men. We're big, dumb creatures. We need baseball to connect. All right. Very good. Question number 2. It's a change of pace. Dan, the question is, what smell reminds you of baseball? Or put another way, what is the smell of baseball? Dan, you go first on this one.
Oh man. So it could be like, the concessions when you walk into a game.
Mm-hmm.
It could be like popcorn or, sausages or hot dogs or stuff like that. Fresh cut grass also. But I like the actual smell of a baseball, it's like that leather. It's funny that it's not something you would think that you would smell often, but sometimes you do, grab it, take a grip of the, 4-seam fastball, and then for whatever reason you smell it. I don't know why.
Yeah. Pat, sometimes I come into the studio here and I catch Dan smelling baseball. It's a little strange, but it's part of his job. Pat, how about you? What's the smell of baseball?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think of my early days as a kid going to Fenway Park and just the smell of hot dogs and popcorn and something grilling, a little smoke in the background, while the game's going on. I don't think there's anything better.
Yeah, that's the Fenway Park smell is definitely those sausages that no shortage still, I think, of sausage stands outside of Fenway Park with the peppers and the onions. And then there's usually, on the grounds of Fenway Park, on the floor, literally, there's like usually some mix of, dried Coke, beer, and like peanut shells and
mustard.
Mustard. But it always smells good somehow. It always. Yeah. All right. Final question for 3 Up, 3 Down. Pat, we'll go back to you first. Forced to choose, what's the one thing about baseball that you just don't get in other sports? What does baseball have that the other major popular sports do not? Pat, what do you think?
I'm going to say a lot of failure, I guess. So our best athletes are going to fail. So I think resiliency and being able to sort of the best players embrace adversity and have short memories. And, so I think being able to deal with failure and being able to turn the page and have a short-term memory and being able to sort of have that next play mentality, next pitch mentality.
Yeah, it's, you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're in the Hall of Fame, right? It's like Kevin Costner says in Bull Durham, if you get, maybe 1 or 2 hits every week, you get a bloop, a bleeder, a Texas leaguer, a ground ball with eyes. You get just 1 extra one of those and you're in the Hall of Fame. If you don't, you never make it to the show. Dan, your thoughts. What makes baseball different than others?
Running clock. So basketball, hockey, football, it's always a running clock. Now with the pitch clock, I guess you could say it's, they're starting to implement a timing element into baseball, trying to speed it up a little bit, but it's more like golf in that, like, everybody's kind of at their own time and the game doesn't end until there's a winner decided. So I like that about baseball.
Yeah, even though there's a pitch clock, you still have no idea when the game's going to end, right?
Yeah.
And, you could be watching the World Series and thinking you're going to get to bed by 11:30, and then the game's in 18 innings and it's 2 a.m. or whatever it is.
Also, the number of people that keep score in the bleachers, like that's unique to baseball too.
Do you think that still happens? People still do that?
I don't know. Maybe an older generation of people.
When I was a kid, like following the 1977 Red Sox, I used to watch the games and keep score at home because I thought that was cool. Later, I learned it was quite nerdy. But yeah, it's really the only. I mean, I guess you could say golf. You certainly keep score, but no one enjoys keeping score in any sport other than baseball. I don't think, really.
No.
It's a thing. You got to know how to do it. You got to know what HBP means. And anyway, well, terrific job, both of you, on 3 Up, 3 Down. And back to you, Dan, to wrap things up.
Okay. Well, thank you to Pat Moriarty and the Deerfield Athletic Department for joining us on the Base Path podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform. All of the podcasts are available on YouTube. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The Base Path podcast is a Siemens Media production.